Joining me now in the studio is John Sitilides, Global Risk Analyst with Triology Advisors. He specializes in global affairs and American politics. John, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
So let's talk about ASEAN, the highlights. We've certainly seen the smiles, the handshakes, the warm compliments leaders bestow upon each other. But what really gets accomplished?
A great deal gets accomplished, Asiye, and I think one of the most important things to look at here is the constant reference to the phrase Indo-Pacific. We saw that in the run-up to Mr. Trump's visit to the region, and we see it now in the conclusion of the ASEAN trip, where India is looked at as the emerging power in the Pacific region to work with the United States, Australia, and Japan to try to help manage China's rise as a strategic competitor to the international economic order in the region.
So that's why we don't hear the word Asia-Pacific anymore from President Trump.
It's Indo-Pacific under the Trump administration, at least for the time being. And I think also to look to see how we work together with our partners, including China, to help diffuse the North Korea situation, which is still a paramount security issue. But in countries such as the Philippines, one of the primary goals of the United States is to work with the Philippine government to stamp out the Islamic State that now has a presence in the island of Mindanao.
What do you make of this new bromance between President Trump and Rodrigo Duterte? I mean, it was their first face-to-face meeting, and Trump certainly pursuing his own style of diplomacy.
I think there's a couple of things to look at here. One, let's never forget that every time President Trump is traveling abroad, he's the first president ever with no military or political experience. So he's bringing a very different style than any other United States president. That's self-evident. But I think with the Philippines, what's also interesting here is looking to see how the Trump administration is able, personally through Mr. Trump, of course, to wean Duterte away from relations that are overly close with China or with Russia. I think that's the most important thing to look at here. There's a U.S.-Philippine alliance that goes back decades. We need to reinforce that every step of the way and make sure Duterte doesn't look to move away from the U.S. as he seemed to be doing in the last years of the Obama administration.
And in fact, he's already said his relationship with China is a big priority.
Of course.
How much do you think President Trump's domestic troubles back at home, in your opinion, did they in any way overshadow his presence on the global stage?
I don't see it in any way at all, except to the degree that there was some commotion in the U.S. about his discussions with Putin and to what extent there was quote-unquote Russian meddling in the elections, which is very clear that there was. The question is, what impact did it actually have? But I think that was mostly domestic politics. But I think while the president was abroad, he seemed to be single-mindedly focused on achieving a series of goals laid out by the National Security Council with all the important countries in the Indo-Pacific region.
From APEC to ASEAN, John, what did these world leaders, Asian leaders, what did they want to hear from President Trump, and did he deliver?
I think our allies wanted to hear that the United States has their backs. That's very much what's of concern, say, with China and the South China Sea, with North Korea. We have nervous allies, especially in South Korea and possibly in Japan. And in places like the Philippines, not only do we see the sovereignty disputes in the South China Sea, but the issue of Islamic State is critical. And as I mentioned earlier, for India, India is going to be the next great emerging power on the world stage. How the U.S. and India manage their relationship will have ripple effects not only in the Indian Ocean, but in the Southeast China Sea and up and down the Pacific region.
All right, we'll leave it there. John Sitilides, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.